Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We always try to bring you the most thought-provoking stuff, and today is no exception. We're going deep on Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, this one's got a fascinating story behind it.
Right, like hidden away for decades, more than 70 years. Talk about a mysterious manuscript. Anyway, we're going to break it down for you, pull out the good stuff.
Yeah, so you don't have to wade through. I mean, the whole thing is really interesting, but this will be like your cheat sheet.
Exactly, the quick and dirty. So the basic setup here, and this is where it gets wild, is that it's a conversation, right, between Hill, he calls himself Mr. Earthbound, and guess who? The devil.
Straight up dialogue.
And the devil spills the beans on how he messes with our minds, all his tricks.
The whole strategy.
And you know what the big takeaway is? It's drifting, like not thinking for yourself, just kind of floating along.
Mm-hmm.
The devil says that's his number one weapon.
Yeah, like mental autopilot. Makes you wonder how often we're all doing that without even realizing it, huh?
That's the scary part. And listen to this. Big names like T. Harv Eker and Gene Chatsky endorse this book.
Mm-hmm.
Not just about money, though. It goes deeper. Spiritual stuff. Ties back to Hill's other famous work, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So we're going to take this chapter by chapter, see what lessons we can pull out, how it all applies to us. You ready?
Let's do it. This is going to be good.
Chapter 6, The Confession Continues. Here's where the devil gets really specific. Says he basically sets up shop in the unused space in our brains, by planting these negative thoughts. What do you think about that unused space idea?
Well, it kind of implies that your mind isn't just empty waiting around. If you're not filling it with your own thoughts, your own direction, something else is going to creep in.
And what's something else?
Fear, according to the devil. It's like his master key, his way of controlling us.
And he even gives us the top 6 fears he uses. Poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, getting old, and of course, death. I mean, come on, that's like the whole human experience right there.
No kidding. Everyone worries about that stuff to some degree.
Right. It's universal. So he's not necessarily inventing these fears, he's just amplifying them.
Yeah, keeping them front and center, so they cloud our judgment and we never do what we're capable of. Just think about how much of the media plays on these fears all the time.
It's true. He even claims his control really ramped up when humans started, thinking for themselves. Like it's a constant battle against positive thoughts.
Yeah.
And he throws out this crazy stat. He controls 98% of people. 98%.
I mean, that number might be a bit of an exaggeration. That would make a point. But it does make you think, like, how susceptible are we all to negativity, to all the noise out there? Maybe it's not about him totally controlling us, but more like he's got this influence that steers us away from our true potential.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now get this. He goes on about wealth. Says some rich folks are helping his cause, but then others, like Rockefeller, remember him, huge philanthropist, focused on health, improving society. The devil calls those guys his worst enemies.
Interesting, right? It's not just about being rich or poor. He's worried about the kind of wealth that empowers people.
Makes them independent.
Exactly. Healthy, able to think for themselves. That kind of philanthropy goes right against his whole strategy.
He hates it.
Yeah.
Then he talks about messing with young people, specifically through habits like drinking and smoking, especially cigarettes. Says they weaken your persistence, concentration, your imagination even. Of course, this was before, we knew all about nicotine addiction. What do you think about his logic?
Well, it's all about undermining your mental strength, even without the addiction part. He wants to weaken those parts of your mind that help you focus, stay on track, and actually go after what you want.
Makes you more likely to drift.
Totally. He also mentions how habits come in, what does he call it? Pairs, triplets, and quadruplets. Like one bad habit just makes it easier to pick up another one.
It's like a domino effect.
Right. Like
Yeah.
let's say you start overeating, you feel guilty, then you don't have energy to exercise, and it just keeps spiraling.
He even says cigarettes are worse than liquor for control because they chip away at your willpower. And then, bam, more bad habits.
It's insidious, It's like a slow burn that weakens you from the inside out.
This is heavy stuff. The last bit in chapter 6, he talks about wanting to start another world war, his big plan for mass fear. Says he was behind the other ones and all the economic depressions too. Talk about a guy who loves chaos.
Well, think about it. When people are scared, when things are uncertain, they're more likely to give up their freedom for a sense of security, They'll follow anyone who promises to fix things.
He wants us desperate.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to chapter 7, hypnotic rhythm. So this is where he introduces this whole concept of like a natural law that he uses to his advantage. What's hypnotic rhythm in simple terms?
It's kind of like, well, imagine a song that gets stuck in your head, You keep replaying it over and over.
A catchy tune.
Right. It's like that, but with thoughts and behaviors. They can get stuck in this repetitive cycle in our minds and in society as a whole.
And he's a master at manipulating that cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And his big trick for using this is, remember, drifting. Not thinking for yourself, basically. Can you give us an example? Like, what does drifting actually look like in everyday life?
Okay, so imagine someone scrolling through social media for hours. No purpose, just scrolling.
Been there.
Or, watching whatever's on TV, having conversations without really saying anything meaningful.
So going through the motions.
Exactly. It's like they're being carried along by the current, Not choosing their own direction.
He then goes on to list all these bad habits he uses. Fear, superstition, greed, the rest. Lust, revenge, anger, being vain, lazy, the whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he focus on getting to young people with this stuff?
Well, because younger minds are more impressionable. They haven't built up those defenses yet.
Like a blank slate.
Right. So those bad habits take root more easily, become ingrained. It's much harder to break them later.
He even says he tries to get kids to just coast through school without really thinking about what they want to do after. No career goals, just get the diploma.
Yeah. Aimless education, that's a problem, I think. Sometimes the focus is on the grades, the degree, not on helping kids figure out who they are, what they're passionate about.
Exactly. Then, and this is where it gets controversial, he says his second best trick is using, get this, parents, teachers, and religious leaders to encourage drifting.
Whoa.
Of course, he says they do it unintentionally.
Right. But the idea is sometimes they stifle the kids' curiosity, the questioning, the thinking for themselves.
Too many rules, no room to explore.
Too much emphasis on just obeying, not questioning. That can really lead to a passive mindset, not taking charge of your own life.
He uses the example of parents over-helping their kids. Says it makes them lose confidence in their own abilities.
Yeah, they never learn to solve problems on their own.
He's all about keeping us dependent. The devil, I mean. This next part is interesting. He says accurate thought is basically death to him. That he needs us to be stuck in fear, negativity, all that. But when we think constructively, it's like we're on the other side.
Right. It's like a battle for our minds. Positive thinking makes us feel empowered, see opportunities. That's the opposite of what he wants.
He loses his grip on us.
Right.
He even criticizes teachers for focusing too much on rote memorization. Instead of teaching kids how to actually use their brains, think critically.
Yeah, just absorbing facts isn't enough. You got to know how to analyze, solve problems, form your own opinions.
Otherwise, you just accept whatever you're told.
Yeah.
Then he gets into procrastination. Big surprise, right? Says putting things off is another major gateway to drifting.
Procrastination keeps you stuck, right? In that limbo of not deciding, not taking action.
And while you're stuck, guess who has more influence?
The devil.
He even gives us this equation. Laziness plus indifference. Procrastination, drifting. Pretty straightforward.
It's the recipe for a life without direction. You don't care, you don't act, and you end up just drifting.
He even boasts about, get this, setting the stage for dictatorships by spreading fear and uncertainty, making political leaders drift. Pretty bold claim.
But think about it. When people are afraid, they want a strong leader to rescue them, even if that leader is actually being controlled by the devil's tactics,
Ooh, that's scary. Now he addresses that old saying, money is the root of all evil. Says that's not quite right. The Bible actually says it's the love of money that's the problem.
Big difference.
Right. It's not about having money. It's about being obsessed with it, greedy. That's what messes people up.
Yeah, would you do anything to get more?
Exactly. Then comes a surprising admission. He says that industrial leaders, the ones who build stuff, advance technology, promote education, those guys are actually hurting his cause.
That's because progress empowers people.
Gives them opportunities.
Knowledge, tools to improve their lives. And when people are busy creating, learning, they're not drifting.
He doesn't like that one bit. Okay, now he gives us a detailed description of a drifter. No clear purpose, procrastinates, blames everyone else, doesn't want to think for themselves. Ouch.
Sounds familiar.
Right. It's a pretty harsh picture. Makes you wonder if any of that applies to us, huh?
A little introspection never hurt.
He then contrasts this with the non-drifter, someone with clear goals, thinking clearly, Always trying to help others. That's the ideal, right?
It is, and that part about helping others, giving service is really interesting. It's like focusing outward, contributing, that keeps you from drifting.
Makes you more resilient.
Exactly.
And you know what he says is the core difference between these two types of people? The choice to use your own mind. That's it. It's about taking responsibility for your thoughts.
That's empowering, isn't it? It's our choice.
He even offers his own cure for drifting. Says you got to wake up and give service to as many people as you can. Give before you get. Surprising advice from the devil, huh?
It is. But think about it. Giving service, helping others, it requires you to be proactive, intentional. It forces you to think beyond yourself.
He's basically admitting that people who focus on helping others are harder to control.
Right.
He hates that.
He hates it.
Finally, he talks about flattery. Says it's bait that plays on our vanity, our ego, and lures us into drifting. Non-drifters, they're less susceptible. Why do you think flattery is so effective? We've all fallen for it at some point.
Well, flattery makes us feel good, right? It can lower our guard. But the problem is, if we're constantly seeking external validation, praise from others, we might start making decisions based on what they want, not what we truly believe or want.
We lose sight of our own purpose.
And, he even points out that this isn't just a young person's problem. Flattery works on everyone. He specifically mentions women and how they're often flattered about their appearance,
So we got to watch out for that. Okay, that leads us perfectly into Chapter 8, Definiteness of Purpose. This is where we start getting into solutions. First to the 7 principles for freedom. Why is definiteness of purpose so important?
Well, without it, you're adrift.
Lost at sea.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like a ship without a rudder. Definiteness of purpose is your compass. It gives you direction, focus, motivation.
Keeps you on course.
Yep.
He says the devil controls more people because he's a better salesman of negativity. He tempts us away from definiteness with all these empty promises.
It's like he's offering the easy path, the path of least resistance. But we all know that doesn't lead to fulfillment.
He also says, though, that we're all born with the privilege of being definite, but most of us lose it. It's like we have to actively cultivate it.
It's not a one-time thing, It takes constant effort, like building a muscle.
Right, it's a practice.
Yeah.
Hill, as Mr. Earthbound, really stresses that understanding how not being careful, how being indecisive leads to drifting is like a major turning point. What do you think he means by that?
I think it's about waking up to the danger of passivity, realizing that we're not just victims of circumstance, we have a choice.
We can choose to be definite, and the devil confirms this. He says having that definite purpose makes his empty promises less tempting. You're less likely to fall for his tricks.
You have that inner strength, you know where you're going, so you're not easily swayed.
Then he gets into how this lack of definiteness starts early, how we pick it up from our parents, teachers, even religious figures, especially when they're expressing fear. It's like a generational curse.
Right. Kids are like sponges, absorbing the energy around them. If the adults are fearful, uncertain, it rubs off.
He's this really strong line. Once any person hesitates, procrastinates, or becomes indefinite about anything, he is just one step removed from my control. Pretty sobering.
It's the power of decisiveness. Even a little bit of hesitation creates an opening for the devil to slip in.
So be definite. Hill connects this to modern concepts like intention, goal-driven, purpose-driven. It's all about being intentional with your life.
Absolutely. We're talking about actively creating your life, not just letting it happen to you.
He then asks a really big question.
Yeah.
Can you gain power through this definiteness without hurting others? And he brings up the law of compensation. What do you make of that?
It's like every action has a reaction.
Right, there's a balance.
So it's like, are you willing to achieve your goals at any cost, even if it means stepping on others?
It's an ethical question. The devil then says something really unexpected. He warns that any habit, except for having a definite purpose, can lead to drifting. Even good things like love for your family if it gets out of control.
Wow.
It's a reminder that even positive emotions need boundaries.
Right. It's about having a core purpose that helps you keep everything else in check.
He says both love and fear can overwhelm our will and reason, and those are crucial for staying definite in our purpose.
It's about staying clear-headed even when emotions run high.
Now, don't let them take over. He really drives home that point. Gaining and keeping power requires not just the purpose, but the actions.
It's not enough to just think about it. You got to do it.
Walk the walk.
Yeah.
Finally, he warns young people, especially, about mistaking temporary success for lasting achievement, particularly if it's, ill-gotten gains. Think long-term.
Shortcuts and unethical behavior might get you results in the short term, but they'll catch up to you eventually.
Okay, let's move on to Chapter 9, Education and Religion. Here, he looks at how these institutions impact our happiness, wealth, and health. What's the devil's take on them?
Well, he's pretty critical, thinks both education and religion, at least in their current forms, can actually encourage drifting.
Not what you'd expect, right?
Nope. He says they don't do enough to promote independent thinking, definiteness of purpose.
Hill also points out that even people with a definite purpose sometimes achieve their goals and realize, wait, this isn't what I wanted. Does that mean you have to stick with the same purpose forever?
Not at all. He actually says that a life of peace and contentment naturally sheds what you no longer need or want. So as you evolve, your goals can change.
That's reassuring.
Right. It's about applying that same definiteness principle to revising your goals, getting rid of the ones that don't serve you anymore.
He then talks about how conflict and disharmony between people lead to drifting. Harmony is essential.
Conflict creates so much noise, It drains your energy and makes it harder to stay focused on what you want.
Makes sense. Okay, get ready for this. The devil actually says your first duty is to yourself, to find a full, happy life, and then you can worry about helping others.
That's a bit controversial.
Right. It goes against the whole self-sacrifice thing.
But he's basically saying you can't pour from an empty cup. Right. You have
Sure.
to take care of yourself before you can truly help others.
It's about finding that balance. He also criticizes parents who indulge their kids too much, saying it sets them up for drifting.
They never learn to face challenges, figure things out on their own.
He loves that. He then connects definiteness of purpose to prayer, says prayer, combined with belief and action, can really make things happen. But he dismisses those negative, whining prayers as useless.
It's the difference between passively hoping for something and actively aligning yourself with it.
Right. Intention plus action. He actually shares how he changed his own prayers to focus on gratitude, seeking worthiness, instead of just asking for more stuff.
It's a shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Powerful stuff. Now, definiteness is also linked to the sixth sense, that intuition, as a way to get insights.
It's like when your mind is focused on a clear goal, you're more open to seeing the opportunities, the signs that are already there.
Like you're tuned in.
Exactly.
And the devil confirms. Definiteness is the key to success. Anything that promotes critical thinking, planning, he hates it.
Of course. That's what frees people from his control.
He criticizes schools again, says they don't teach definiteness enough. It's all about credits, memorization, not enough about finding your purpose.
It's like he's saying the education system doesn't prepare you for the real world, the world where you have to make choices and create your own path.
His conclusion: neither schools nor churches teach kids enough about their own minds. And that, he says, is the most valuable thing you possess.
Knowing yourself, understanding how your mind works, that's the real power.
He even offers a whole list of reforms for the education system, from making students the teachers to explaining hypnotic rhythm and encouraging prompt decision-making. Pretty radical.
It's like a complete overhaul. He wants an education that teaches self-reliance, critical thinking, and the ability to create your own future.
He even suggests teaching self-control, the law of increasing returns, how to be cautious without being blindly obedient, encouraging that sixth sense, and emphasizing that school is just the beginning.
Right. It's about lifelong learning, taking responsibility for your own growth.
He actually suggests using successful business people as teachers to share practical knowledge.
Like bringing the real world into the classroom.
Well,
He even thinks it would be smart to introduce these ideas in private schools first, and then, let the demand spill over into the public system. Interesting strategy.
Other suggestions: training in negotiation, understanding money, replacing lectures with discussions.
More interactive, more practical.
It's all about equipping people to thrive in the real world. Okay, that brings us to Chapter 10, self-discipline, another crucial principle. Why is self-discipline so important, especially for breaking that hypnotic rhythm?
It's the muscle you need to resist those bad habits, those negative thoughts that keep you stuck. You can have the best intentions, but without self-discipline, you won't follow through.
It's the bridge between thinking and doing. Now, he focuses on three major physical appetites that require self-mastery: food, sex, and the expression of opinions. Why these three, do you think?
Well, they're all really powerful drives, right? And if you're not in control, they can completely take over your life.
He talked about eating only what you need, avoiding overindulgence, and even the importance of elimination, making sure you're getting rid of waste.
It's about taking care of your body, your physical health, which of course impacts your mind.
Right, it's all connected. Now, on the sex drive, he talks about transmuting that energy into other things instead of just physical gratification. And he actually suggests educating people about it. Pretty radical for the time, huh?
It was. And, it makes sense. Sex is such a powerful force. It can be creative or destructive.
Right.
He's saying we need to understand it, manage it, use that energy wisely.
And he says accurate thought is the only thing more important than understanding sex, and that a controlled sex drive can actually help you think more clearly because it's the same energy. What do you make of that connection?
Well, it's interesting. He's saying that when we master our physical urges, we free up that energy for our minds.
Like we're not wasting it?
Right. It can be channeled into something more productive, more focused.
Then he talks about expressing poorly formed opinions, how it leads to guessing instead of seeking facts. He calls it a grasshopper mind that can't stick with one thought.
We've all been there, jumping from one thing to another without really thinking things through.
He even cautions against writing uninvited letters, sharing his own story of how it cost him a job. Ouch.
It's a reminder that words have power. We need to choose them carefully, think about the consequences before we speak or write.
Especially in today's world, right?
Especially in today's world.
Okay, the devil then reiterates the power of our own thoughts, how that's the only thing we can truly control and rely on.
That's empowering, isn't it?
It is. He says self-discipline is the key to breaking the hypnotic rhythm of drifting.
It's the antidote to passivity. Self-discipline lets you consciously create your own patterns, your own destiny.
Okay, chapter 11. Learning from adversity. All about how we deal with challenges.
This is where he reframes failure.
Interesting. He says failure can actually be beneficial, that it contains the seed of an equivalent advantage.
He's saying that every failure, every setback has a lesson to teach us, a new opportunity hidden inside it.
Most people miss it, though. Why?
Because they get caught up in the negative emotions,
Yeah.
The disappointment, the fear.
They give up. He says success is often right around the corner from where we quit.
It's that persistence, that willingness to keep going even when it's hard, that makes all the difference.
He even calls failure a blessing in disguise sometimes. How so?
Because it shakes things up,
Yeah.
It forces you to break out of your routine, your comfortable patterns, and try something new.
It disrupts that hypnotic rhythm.
Exactly.
Now, he clarifies that nature's laws don't change just because we fail. We're the ones who give up our freedom by misusing those laws. He uses gravity as an example.
Right. If you jump off a building, gravity doesn't stop working just because you didn't want to fall.
Ouch.
It's about understanding and working with natural principles, not against them.
Makes sense. The devil then says something that really resonated with me. Outstanding success is often directly proportional to the amount of defeat you've experienced.
It's like those challenges, those failures, build your character, your resilience.
They make you stronger.
Exactly. And the more you overcome, the more you're capable of achieving.
He says, failure brings a climax in which one has the privilege of clearing his mind of fear and making a new start in another direction. It's a chance to hit the reset button.
It's like a mental detox. You let go of the fear, the limiting beliefs, and open yourself up to new possibilities.
He even says nature uses things like illness, economic downturns, and personal failures to disrupt our negative patterns and force us into new, potentially beneficial habits.
It's like a wake-up call. Sometimes we need a big shake-up to get us moving in the right direction.
Now, he gets into a simplified explanation of how the mind works. Contrast the idea of a physical subconscious with the idea that it's more like universal energy organized into thoughts.
It's a more holistic view, right? Like our minds are connected to something bigger, something beyond just our individual brains.
He says emotions intensify our thoughts and can easily override reason, leading to disharmony in our relationships. Emotional intelligence is key here.
Absolutely. We got to learn to manage our emotions so they don't control us, especially in our relationships.
He brings up the sixth sense again as a way to tap into thoughts in other minds, even information from infinite intelligence. It's like we have this untapped potential for intuition.
It's like we're all connected, And when we're in tune, we can pick up on those subtle signals, those insights that come from beyond our conscious minds.
He says understanding how the mind works helps us navigate relationships and achieve all sorts of riches. Self-awareness seems to be the foundation of everything.
It's like the key that unlocks all the doors. When you know yourself, you can understand others, you can make better choices, you can create the life you want.
He connects adversity to our relationships, saying that good relationships benefit everyone, while bad ones cause harm.
Makes sense. It's about choosing who you surround yourself with, cultivating relationships that support your growth.
He says adversity actually weakens drifters because they don't know how to deal with it, but it strengthens non-drifters because they use it as fuel to grow.
That's that resilience we were talking about.
He emphasizes that we always have the power of positive thought to overcome challenges and turn them into opportunities.
It's our choice, you know? We can let adversity defeat us, or we can use it to learn and grow.
He then gets into the law of increasing returns, where going the extra mile, giving more than expected, leads to greater rewards in the long run.
It's like an investment. You put in the effort, the generosity, and it comes back to you multiplied.
He ends with the law of compensation, how nature always seeks balance. Good actions eventually bring good results, and bad actions bring bad results. It might not be immediate, it might not even affect you directly, but it all balances out in the end.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, and our actions have ripple effects.
Okay, let's move on to the last chapter we're covering today, chapter 12. Environment, time, harmony, and caution. These are the remaining principles for freedom.
He covers a lot of ground in this chapter. It's about how we interact with the world around us and how our choices shape our destiny.
He starts with environment. Says we can consciously choose our environment, the people, the things that influence our thinking.
And that hypnotic rhythm, remember? It makes those influences stick, turning them into habits.
So choose wisely, he says, non-drifters. They actively control their environment, surrounding themselves with positive influences.
They're not just passively absorbing whatever's around them. They're creating a space that supports their growth.
He says negative thoughts come from not adapting to nature's laws. Nature hates idleness, so if your mind's not busy with something constructive, it gets filled with negativity.
Use it or lose it.
He emphasizes that nature doesn't care about morals, it just cares about action according to its laws.
It's a system, you know, like cause and effect.
He also says every normal adult brain can communicate directly with infinite intelligence. It's like we have this incredible potential that most of us aren't even tapping into.
That's a mind-blowing thought, isn't it?
It is. He uses economic bubbles and crashes as an example of what happens when we try to get something for nothing. It leads to fear, panic, chaos.
It's not sustainable.
He then defines time as the law of hypnotic rhythm, meaning how long it takes for thoughts to become permanent depends on the thoughts themselves.
Like negative thoughts tend to stick faster, right? They have that stronger emotional charge.
He clarifies that while individual thoughts can change, shifting from negative to positive takes a conscious effort.
You have to make the choice. You know, you have to decide to focus on the positive, to retrain your mind.
He talks about time as nature's way of turning experience into wisdom. And wisdom comes from thinking about and analyzing your experiences, not just inheriting it from someone else.
You have to earn it.
He says wisdom usually comes after age 40 because younger people are still focused on gathering knowledge.
Still figuring things out.
Right. He identifies adversity and failure as nature's way of teaching wisdom to those who are ready to receive it. Expert.